So today is about chapter 10, section 3, the Muslim culture, the Muslim world that is there. It's really important because there's so many things that stair step off of their advancements. All right. And the reason why you need to know that is because without some of the saving graces that they had, there would have been a lot of knowledge that was left. There would have been a lot of culture that wasn't implemented into other societies that built upon that culture. And we kind of got to make sure that we study and understand why and how they built that culture that was there. Some of the impressive things that they did do. All right. So, what you're going to end up doing is on announcements. It's going to have a top post here that is the 29th, Thursday the 29th on announcements. It says for today's assignments using your MyHRW on page 273, you are to create a book highlighting the key components of Islamic culture. Take a piece of construction paper and fold it in half to create a 4-page book. Each page should go as follows. All right, so right here, this is the inside of my book. This is the outside of my book. Don't do page 1, the front cover, first, do it last, because that way you have all of your information from pages 2, 3, 4. So then that way you know what you may want to put in to the front cover. All right. So page 1 on the inside says Muslim society. It talks about cities. It talks about social classes. It talks about women. Page 3 talks about knowledge. That's the title of it, is knowledge. Talks about astronomy and the house of wisdom, which is basically like a gigantic university. Okay. The back page, art, science, and technology, literature, art, and architecture, medicine, and math. It says your final product should be a 4-page book that displays the reasons of why Muslim culture was important to the world during this time, for the future, in history, with illustrations and a paragraph facts written on each. This will be a test grade for the next 6 weeks. All right, so I'm going to go through the first one with you. All right, and in your book, on page 273 on MyHRW, if you want to go ahead and go to that. There are subdivisions of the Muslim society. Make sure this is up there. Okay, so like on the book right here, there's subdivisions of your title. So the red right here is Muslim society. Tells you exactly where to look at. All right. And then underneath that is the bullets that would go with it, like the rise of Muslim cities. Turn to the next page. Talks about the 4 social classes, 273. Talks about the social classes. Talks about the role of women. All right. So if we read the first one pretty much together, it says over time, the influence of Muslims grew as the empire spread across more and more lands. The many cultural traditions of these lands combined with the Arabic culture to create an international flavor. The Muslim society had a sophisticated match at the time only by the Tang Empire of China. So there was only 2 major empires of society in the world, and they're comparing the 2. That cosmopolitan character was more and most evident in urban centers. So our first thing we would do is we would title it Muslim society. Then we would write down cities, because that's going to be our next bullet that's underneath it from our canvas deal. All right, and it starts talking about Baghdad. All right. Until the construction of Baghdad, Damascus was the only and leading city in the world at the time. Cultural center of Islamic learning. Other cities grew up around the power center. Talks about the Umayyad capital, talks about Cairo, talks about Jerusalem. Cities which symbolize the strength of the caliphate were very impressive. All right, it goes on to talk a little bit more in comparison of Baghdad about the 3 circular protective walls, the caliph's palace made of marble and stone, the main streets, the middle wall. It shows an example of how big Baghdad was, population compared to Constantinople, compared to Rome, compared to some other ones. So it gives you some factual stuff that's in there. And then on the next page, it kind of talks a little bit about more about how grand the palace was. That there was marketplaces outside the walls. There was a protection that's inside. It talks about its population reaching almost 1 million people during that time. So it was humongous. All right. So all of that is going to be kind of a paraphrased information about Baghdad as far as within the cities part of it right there. All right. Then I would go on to the 4 social classes. Thank you, sir. I go on to the 4 social classes. I go on to the role of women. Label it, write some information. Women, label it, write some information. At the bottom of it, or somewhere in between there, I would use one of these 3 or multiple 3 and draw what represents Muslim society. It can be a backdrop of Baghdad. It can be an example of what social classes look like. It can be a Muslim woman. I would do the exact same thing with knowledge. Look through knowledge, find the key points that are listed in Canvas. It says to make sure you write about these. I would look through art, science, and technology, find the key points listed in Canvas, write information about those, make an illustration, then go back, have your name, Muslim culture, and draw what is depicted in all of the book on your cover. All right. So again, creating a short, easy, illustrated example of Muslim culture based upon your Canvas topic of society, knowledge, arts and science and technology, and then re-illustrate the front cover. Everything is based upon chapter 10-3, starts on page 273. You're going to get a test grade on the end of it for your final product. You will have some time tomorrow to also work on this while you're watching History of Mankind. I'll leave the lights on. We'll have History of Mankind going. You can still illustrate it. You can still go on, but make sure you use your class time wisely to go through section 10-3 and illustrate it. All right, any questions? If you have trouble logging on to MyHRW, the example is up here on the board where it says use hmo.sville.us. That takes you through your Google login. You don't have to type in a password. If you want to type in your password, use the one on the bottom. It says log in, s.first.last at Sville SISD, and then 6-digit number, and it will take you to page 273. Zoom in, you can find your information there. All right, everybody good? There we go. Get after it.